Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Legend from 1985. So I think a lot of times I end up getting Legend actually confused with Willow, because they're kind of like, they look very similar in a lot of ways. But as far as story goes, it's not the same, and there are some characters that differ from the two, where of course in this movie we have the devil, whereas in Willow we have just some sorceress, some witch that is go on to be like the main antagonist or the main villain of the movie. So we have in this movie a story that is very light, and I think that that's the main source of my moaning and groaning about this movie. Uh, there is some stuff, like especially towards the end, that I enjoyed. There's bits and pieces that I'm just like, okay, this is kind of interesting, but like really, like towards the end, I'm more interested than that than anything else in this film, just because it's like I'm not interested in the story whatsoever. But man, when we actually get to that fight sequence, though, towards the end there, uh, but I'm like, man, I just don't want to go through this movie ever again. I just want to skip to the end, just to get to that real like interesting part where we actually have Tim Curry in makeup, because I'm sure that makeup took a number of hours to apply, as well as me justifying in my brain. I'm like, yeah, I probably wouldn't have had that kind of makeup consistently throughout that movie either. So they had to kind of create like creative ways to consistently try to use this character. But yeah, there was problems, of course, with all of that makeup always being applied. It would have been crazy. Um, but also, my main attraction of wanting to see this movie is really because, like, we have certain other places that eventually use like a similar kind of like devil kind of character. Which in this movie we have Tim Curry be playing the darkness, not exactly the devil, but still. Because we have him being used similarly in like the Mint Mobile ads with Ryan Reynolds, or we also go on and eventually have Tenacious D in The Pick of Destiny. Their devil character in that movie eventually is to be like Tim Curry's Legend Darkness character. So as well as us also kind of seeing slight tweakingly variations of this kind of devil throughout the years somewhere. Maybe even like a Ghost Rider comic book or something like that at some points in kind of the younger years. But anyways, I think at one point, like in the featurette of like the first Ghost Rider movie, there eventually is a depiction of this same kind of similar devil being used, even in the featurette, where they kind of talk about how the comic books have changed over the years. So, with that said, um, grading of this movie and teeing it up. So, I would have to give the grading of this movie. It's a light bad movie, just because like the weakest parts is story, and just the fact that we don't have like Tim Curry in that makeup. It just really makes the movie suffer, as well as us just having me going like, this is really what this movie is. Really, there's some unique things just kind of placed in points, but it's so weak of a film. It's sadly so weak of a film. It's so like, oh man, like if they only could have had like something going on in the early part of this movie, it would really make up for like the parts that I actually like, uh, towards like closer to the end of this one. But it is what it is. So with that said, teeing it up, what is this movie about? So we go into this film and we have Lily, who eventually is to make her way to Nina's place consistently because she wants to hang out with this forest boy named Jack, who's played by Tom Cruise. So Lily eventually is to get this unique forest experience where she is to go on and see these unicorns. And come to find out, we have it to where the Darkness, who is the devil technically in this film, played by Tim Curry, is to want to go and take his troll, which is Blix, and have Blix go on and wipe out all the unicorns. So that way, weirdly, we just have these unicorns that symbolize daylight, that symbolize goodness. And if Blix is to kill off these unicorns, then there will be like no more dawn, there'll be no more sunlight, and then darkness could go on and be able to rule over everywhere and take over the world. And I'm like, man, that's really the story. We go on and we have a lot of cliche things done where the princess is to be taken by the villain side of things, and we have Jack, who is kind of this character of whoever he needs to be for the story, is to eventually have to go on and not only save Lily, but is to also like figure out a way to kind of present this certain kind of way to take down the darkness. Which, once we get to that, I'm like, really? Like, this is how we're trying to defeat this character? Okay, alright. Like, this, like, you can't go on and just battle this character out because he's too strong. But let's just come up with this. So, like, Oakley Dokley, I'm thinking at some point that this movie will probably get remade. So good for me to eventually just review this movie anyways, because I'm assuming that they're probably going to go on and review this, remake this movie, reboot this movie, and hopefully put a lot more elements in it. Because really thinking about it, they remade it. So what's going to stop them from like not remaking this movie and completely probably tweak or change it or whatever? Or probably do the exact same movie for whatever reason. So with that said, let's just light bad film. Where can you go on and see this movie? Really, there's quite a few probably places you can just rent this film. Amazon's, Vudu, that's usually the go-tos. But I'm going to give you possibly some free apps that I've used over time. All these will probably be through a Google search. So there's like, that's the only way to be able to find these apps now, because that freaking sucks. But it is what it is. So, first off, see Movies app. So one of these Movies apps. So that'd be the letter C Movies app. So go ahead and Google search that. Hopefully be able to find that app, download it, and be able to see a number of movies for absolutely free. Premium access stuff that you would normally need a specific exclusive app to only be able to see certain things. You can go on and see this movie there, possibly for absolutely free. Here's another app for you, Fox HD Movies. Regardless of what I say next, this might help you or hinder you finding this app. So, dare in fact, Fox HD Movies will be the logo of this app, but the title will be something different. It'll say Play 1080p HD Movies. There's that for you. Google search that. And then there's also going to be another app that kind of has weirdly changed the way of which that it has gone and been a thing. Because I would normally recommend this through a Google Play Store, but I guess this is no longer on the Google Play Store easily available, so that freaking sucks. So with that said, going on to a Google search, you can search two words TV Crush. And TV Crush had gone on and changed its title and its logo, but eventually when you search TV Crush, you'll find this anyways. So eventually there'll be a title of this app that says HD Movies with 1, 2, 3 movies being put also in that same title. You can hopefully find this app where an HD movies King Crown off the side logo is to be there. Hopefully, you can download this app and be able to dare, in fact, watch a number of stuff for absolutely free. Or you can probably just go on to a Google Play Store search and search the word movies app or whatever app store that you possibly have, and then you might be able to find some bootleg movie apps for absolutely free and do that. So, because I've spent so much time talking about this movie, going into it, complaining about it probably, let's go into that double five time territory. Let's just go into, of course, what would be spoilers of this film, because it's spoiler time, it's about the time we get to spoil this movie. So, we have Lily in the beginning of this film going on and meeting with a girl named Tina. Tina is to be living out in the woods somewhere, and so we of course have Tina that is to talk to Lily and say like, well, hey, like you live in this big massive castle. Why do you always come here and like just hang out with me? And Lily's just like, well, like because your life is just as amazing as mine, and so that's why I want to hang out with you. And Tina's like, oh wow, that's great. Okay, like when really looking at it, like here's also the goofy thing. When Lily is to have not been back after X number of days, no knight comes looking for her, no army comes looking for her, no one cares, I guess, in the castle. So they just assume that this girl could be dead and they couldn't care less. Man, is that kind of sad. But it's true. It's so true. So, but going on. So, Lily eventually is to leave Tina to go into the forest to meet her forest boy, because that's kind of technically what they call her, or call her. That's technically what they call Tom Cruise in this movie, just a forest boy, because I guess he was raised in the forest. He's basically Tarzan without the whole like kind of rope that he swings on and yelling thing. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, pushing on. So Jack is to go on and meet with Lily and is to have these moments between the two of them where Lily is wanting to comfort Jack with her singing because she just loves to sing. She's kind of like the Snow White kind of character in this movie. But she's also a princess, so man, does that make sense. So we have Lily that is to be talking with Jack, and Jack is like, well, hey, like, I want to finally show you this site that we've kind of been building up for you to finally see. And Lily's like, oh, great, like, let's go on. So Jack goes with Lily to showcase to her these unicorns. And Lily is to go on and, of course, love the sight of these unicorns so much so that she wants to walk further and further close to these unicorns to the point of her getting so close that eventually the unicorns are kind of just riding around her, going on and kind of crazily just kind of being all over the place, to the point of Jack going on and telling her, hey, like what you just did was forbidden. Like you shouldn't have gone on and done that. And Jack couldn't have stopped her at any point to just tell her like, no, you can't go on and do that. Like we have to stop here. No, like he just kind of lets her do it. So now we have to go on to another part of this story that I probably didn't get to, so we'll get to now. So Darkness. Darkness is just hanging out in his throne. He's just chilling like only Tim Curry can. And so Darkness is to kind of bring over his troll, who is Blix. Blix. B-L-I-X. Blix. I want to say Bricks because it sounds like I want to just say that because it's so easy. But his name is Blix. Darkness is to call up Blix and be like, hey, Blix, how dark are you? Like, how, like, are you, like, really, like, how much allegiance do you have for the darkness? You know what I'm saying? So Blix is going on and saying that he's pitch black. He's definitely he's on the level. And so Darkness is going like, okay, because I want to send you on a mission because I finally want to snuff out the sunlight. Like, I want to go on and be able to rule over this world and not have to worry about the sun because the sun will kill me. Like, the sunlight will kill me. I have to live in darkness all the time. It's a pain. So, Darkness is telling Blix to go on and go and find unicorns, because I guess unicorns is the symbol of goodness and is also the symbol of, like, when they get snuffed out, so does the sunlight. So, we have Darkness that's telling Blix, I'm going to send you on this mission to kill these unicorns, and that's what you're just going to do. So Blix is like, okay, like, I'll go on and I'll do that. So Blix, as well as this kind of like pig looking like troll, is to go with him to make his way to these unicorns. And so we have it to where these trolls are going on and being with both Lily and Jack as they're kind of going on and doing what they're doing. And so Lily and Jack go on and are to make it to this kind of this little cliff that has this thing of water in it. And we also had a moment where Lily, when she was in Tina's house, was to see that all of a sudden the whole entire room was to fill up with snow. And she was like, okay, that's a very odd visual. And then all of a sudden it went back to the way it was, and she was kind of confused. So Lily is to tell Jack that she is to have this ring, and whoever is to go on and find this ring is going to marry her. So Lily goes on and drops this ring into this water, hoping that Jack will go on and find this ring so he can eventually marry Lily. So Jack jumps into this water, and then all of a sudden we have the trolls that go on and chop off one of the horns of the unicorns, and somehow or another they're going to save this other unicorn for later, so that way they can kind of chop it off towards the end of the film and kill it for whatever reason. And I'm just like, okay, like, this is a horse. It shouldn't be that hard to find, but whatever. It is what it is. So, not only that, but then also the trolls go and eventually collect Lily, as Lily was to go on and make her way back to Tina's home, and all of a sudden Tina's home is now in a very snowed in environment, because once they snuffed out one of the unicorns, all of a sudden all the world all of a sudden changed from this bright sunny day to now being in this wintry environment, to the point where Jack is now banging on this now iced out water, and he's desperately trying to get air. He bashes through the ice, pokes his head out to breathe, and so now Jack is scrambling to figure out what the heck happened. Why is it all of a sudden his nice forest is now covered in winter? So here's also the goofy thing. So Jack goes on and meets up with an elf named Grump. And this guy is involved in a wintry environment, and he's shirtless. Does anybody get that? I get it that this guy had to work out like crazily with all his abs and all that, unless it's just weirdly natural. But I'd be like, dude, it's wintertime, throw on a coat, throw on a cloak, like... And because we have it where, like, Jack, he's to throw on this cloak. They give him this cloak so he can be warm. But I'm like, but there's a guy, shirtless, right in front of us throughout this whole entire movie. And you would think that this guy is cold as F within this environment, unless it's like all fake snow and all this stuff. Plus, all these characters are just smothered in glitter throughout this whole entire movie. You would expect any of these people in this movie would probably be blind. So, man, is that great. Uh, After this film was all done, having to be just consistently just glittered up all the time. Every single character just had things of glitter just on them because it's fantasy movie, I guess. Sure. Uh, you would think a number of these characters are like, yeah, I never want to go on and do another fantasy movie again because I never want to be covered in glitter ever again. Because it's hard to get off, and it was probably miserable for a long stretch of time to just be glittered up every single day. So, moving on. So, we go into this story, and so Jack has to correct the mistake of Lily, technically, because Lily was to be blamed for killing the unicorn, but Jack also has to take the blame because he was with Lily, when it happened. So, like, Gump, who is the elf, as well as these other elves, are all blaming Jack, so he's going to have to save the day here. Lily is to be collected by these trolls and be sent to the darkness, because eventually darkness is to, of course, be very, like, realizing that for how Lily is such a goody good girl, that he wants to go on and kind of corrupt her and take her because she is so good, and he's just like, you know what, like I just want to take her to the dark side. I feel like it can easily be done. It feels like this girl has had a lot of guilt that could kind of shift her into eventually becoming like on my side of things. Because I'll just eventually have some person just dance around with her, and that'll just quickly make her evil for whatever goofy reason. Because if this girl sings, then she also has to dance in this film. Man, is this girl just working on her portfolio. Man, Mia Sara, like, man, is she just working on a portfolio of all the movies that she's eventually going to do, right? In the future, I'm sure. Maybe she only did just this movie, and she's like, okay, I'm done. I'll just go into theater for the rest of my life. Moving on. So, we have it to where Jack is going with these elves, and Jack is to continue to meet up with these trolls. The trolls at some point are trying to stop the elves and Jack, and at some points we go on and have them kind of fight it out a little bit, and so on and so. But really, we also have the darkness, who is to show up and speak to Jack and speak to these elves, and is to kind of warn them of what is to come. And of course, we have the darkness, who's not in actual like devil makeup and everything like that. He's just kind of cloaked, and you can't really see anything. It basically looks like these guys are just talking to some like weird looking cloaked character that makes no sense to me. You know what? Here's what they could have gone on and done to just kind of nix, like, not have to do so much makeup all the time. They could have actually had it to where Tim Curry could have actually just been Tim Curry, and could have just been the vessel for darkness. Like, we could have had like a Tim Curry character that had been like tortured by the darkness, that like they could have just taken him and like gone on this mission, and we could have the darkness consistently controlling him, and that would have worked out fine. To just use that kind of story to eventually help us out here without the whole makeup thing. And then we would have gone on and consistently just been like, oh, okay, well, that's like a reasonable way to just kind of do this. And plus, it would have saved a lot of money to just kind of have them have problems like figuring out like, well, hey, how can we play this off? So we go into this film and we have Jack meet up with this fairy, and so the fairy, come to find out, is not just this like really small goal looking fairy. It at some point is to have her become like the size of a normal person. And so Jack is speaking with this fairy, and so she is to tell Jack that she'll kind of give him anything that he wants, anything that he wishes. And so the fairy is to go on and give Jack this armor and this sword so that way he can be the knight that that the fairy knows that Jack wants to be for Lily. So now we have these characters going closer and closer to making it to this castle, and they kind of have to go through this swamp to be able to make it there. So we go on and have Jack with this shield making his way through the swamp. We have one of the elves, Screwball, who ends up falling into the swamp, and Jack has to save him. So the further and further they make it into the swamp, they end up meeting this one woman that looks very like goblin-esque, or just kind of very gross looking. And so this character is to be called Meg Mucklebones, or something like that. And so Meg is to appear and want to just kill all these characters off. And Jack is to mention to Meg that she is to be the most beautiful woman in the world, and that even though she's ugly, and that, hey, like, look at the shield that has a reflection on it. And all of a sudden, like, the girl is just so infatuated with her reflection, and she's pulling off the shield and taking it off to the side. She's like, well, now, like, I can go on and just eat you guys for dinner. And so Jack is going on and trying to slowly getting his sword out, and he's just kind of tempted to just kind of swing, but this sword that Jack has is heavy. So when Meg is getting ready to strike, we go and we have Jack, who is to take the swing and chop off Meg's head. And he's like, "Oh my god, I just killed this thing. Oh my god, I was a hero." So Jack takes back his shield and is making his way further into this castle. So we go on and have it at one point where one of the trolls is to get in trouble, because we have one of the trolls that get in trouble, that he gets dumped into this hole where he just gets shot out into this prison. And when we have Jack and we have the elves make their way to getting close to this castle, they make the same mistake. So they fall into this hole and they go on into this prison, and we have Jack that's turning to Gump, saying like, well, hey man, like, you can easily just kind of break out of this cell, right? And Gump is saying like, well, this cell is made out of iron, and elves have problem with iron. And Jack is like, oh crap. So Jack is going on and saying like, well, like we can probably get like the fairy to like become larger and be able to free us because she can go and grab the keys easily and free us. And the fairy, who is wanting Jack to keep it a secret that she can kind of grow to a normal person's size, the fairy is kind of ticked off. So the fairy is to go on and tell Jack, it's like, well, I'm only going to go on and I'm going to save you guys only if Jack is to kiss me. So Jack kind of smooches her on the cheek. She's like, no, it's not what I asked for. And so the fairy is to go and change her looks to look like Lily, and that makes Jack more tempted to want to kiss this fairy. But he's like, no, like this is wrong, like this is magic, and I won't be swayed by that kind of thing. So the fairy is to go on and just be upset, but she still rescues the characters anyways, and then is to uh, really just tell Jack here that she can go on and kind of leave him here and torture him. Because, come to find out, the other troll that had this massive helmet on reveals his face, and he is actually an elf like one of them. And so, come to find out, there's some common ground between these people. And so, one of these big guys that are in this kind of boiler room kind of part of this castle are going and grabbing the elf, and that is to be Blunder, that was to reveal himself to be an elf. They take him and they want to make a kind of a like a pie out of him. Like if anybody's to go on and like have like a pot pie where it's kind of like a chicken or a number of items, like there's sometimes where it's a lot of vegetables in there, kind of random items like chopped up carrot or just so like it's kind of like that where they try to make him into this kind of weird concoction of like a meat pie. And man, is there going to be a lot of bones in there. Holy crap. So, but it's all just the visuals of the film because they're going to rescue this guy later. So, we go on and we have to have Jack and the number of elves rescue this other guy. So they have to go on and they have to try and kill these kind of boiler room workers to save this other elf. And so they cut the guy out of the pie and rescue him. And they have to fight off these two boiler room kind of workers. So they go and they tip over this kind of really hot water. And that, I guess, is to scold the workers so badly that they end up getting killed off here from the horrible pain of that hot water, I guess. So now moving on. So we have the Darkness. We have Darkness who is wanting to corrupt Lily. And we have, of course, where Darkness is just wanting to have Lily just sit in this chair and just talk. Like, that's all he wants. And Lily is just like, no. No, not really. And Darkness is just like, all I want you to do is just sit down and talk. Isn't that simple? Like, it's basically, like, really, when you go on and you think about it, it's kind of like a date. A date where, like, the guy is just going on about, like, you know what, like I don't want to, like, pressure you too much, and I don't want to put too much on you. Like, how about we just talk things over, just kind of see if we have a connection here, and then we'll go from there. It's kind of like that. So, like, this guy isn't wanting to, like, just, like, get some photos, see what you look like, if you know what I mean. Like he's going on to like, no, like I want some serenading moment. I want to kind of woo you over because Darkness is going on and talking to some entity that is to really just tell him that that's technically what Darkness needs to do. He needs to woo this woman over. He needs to go and figure out a way to best please her, to then corrupt her, then change her into uh, Lilith, because that would make the most sense. Because if you go on and you think about like the Lilith character, they don't even say that in this movie, but that's where I would kind of head for like the evil version of Lily would be Lilith, because it's also kind of like a supernatural character, anyways. But again, that's just this guy in my how my brain works. So Darkness is talking to Lily and just wanting to just kind of like, hey, let's just sit in a chair and talk. And the girl's like, no. But eventually, the Darkness is to figure out a way to dance with Lily. And Lily, God, I want to just say Willie. Lily, Wheelie! Lily is to go on and is to be dancing with this kind of this figure in this very interesting looking dress that is this black mask or this black face. Can't tell who it is. And so eventually what ends up happening is Lily cannot not dance with this character that is doing these kind of ballet like performance and this and that. So Lily is seduced by this dance, and all of a sudden we go on, and while they continue to dance, all of a sudden the dress infuses with Lily to all of a sudden all we see is Lily now as this kind of more darker variation of this character, because Darkness had figured out a way to simply by dancing corrupt this girl, as if like she had watched Footloose and she's on Kevin Bacon's side for whatever reason. So now Lily's this darker part of herself, but she's still like kind of holding on to that goodness in some way or another. So we now have Jack, who is to try and take all of these dishes, all of these metal dishes, because Jack is to realize that the Darkness's weakness is light. So Jack is coming up with this plan with Gump and all these other elves that they need to figure out how to reflect the sunlight into this castle somehow, as if they're fighting a vampire, and they need to figure out a way. They can't just poke a hole through the castle. They just can't come up with like, hey, let's makeshift a window in this castle. No, like let's shoot a cannon into one of the walls in the castle and kill this thing that way. Because heaven forbid this thing actually has like cannons anywhere or whatever. They could have come up with a unique way to just break down a wall, and could have done that. You could have had the Darkness devil character so massive looking that you could have actually had it where like the Darkness could have become such a monstrous character, like a Godzilla almost sized character, that you could have had Jack, who is to frustrate the Darkness so much so that he bashes through these walls, and that's how we break into the sunlight. And you could have just had this strategy, this smart like thing, but instead we have all these metal dishes to just grab. So we go on, we have to do this light reflecting trick that takes forever to do. And so now the Darkness is to have the last unicorn, and now instead of darkness killing it, or instead of any of the trolls killing it, we now have Lily, who's supposed to kill the last troll. So Jack is going on and having this arrow cocked. What a weird, goofy number of words that I said here. And so we have Jack, who's kind of thinking, like, I am going to trust Lily. I don't think she's going to really kill this unicorn. And so Lily goes on and breaks the chain of the unicorn instead of killing the unicorn. And so the unicorn tries to run off. We have the unicorn horn that has this magic ability about it, to where one of the trolls is to consistently be playing around with this unicorn horn, and that's what gets it to where it ends up getting to where one of the trolls get dumped in one of these holes because these guys are acting stupid. And so people got upset. Like, Darkness got upset that these guys were doing something stupid here. So we go on and we have Jack that is now fighting with this sword against Darkness because they're still waiting on this whole, like, last elf reflecting light thing, so that way they can go and kind of finally kill the Darkness. And come to find out, one of the elves is to fall asleep at the very top of this last thing that he's supposed to put up. So the fairy, who is Una, is waking up this elf, and he's like, oh, okay, hey, what time is it? And so he's like, oh, yeah. So he goes on and props up this dish, and then all the lights start reflecting. And so the Darkness ends up getting killed by light. And so now, after they kill Darkness, really, and they've kind of taken down all the other elves, all the other bad elves, they've kind of slain them or taken them down, or all the bad trolls, not elves. So after that, we go on and have it where Jack is to realize that now Lily is just kind of like comatose, and in a very traditional fashion we have to kind of wake up Sleeping Beauty. And so Jack goes on and is to go into that water again, dive in there, find the ring, and is to give Lily this ring back, but then is to also kiss her, and is to change her back to her good side, her good character again. And so after that, we have all the elves, and we have, like, both the unicorns being both unicorns again, and we have the fairy all going on and kind of waving to Jack and Lily as they are to go off and get married and be in love forever, and so on and so forth, as they're going their merry way. And that's how the movie just kind of ends. So with that said, more than likely I forgot about a little bit of details here and there within this movie, but hopefully at some point I also got some things correct for this film. So let me know in the comments below how you felt about Legend, if you were to figure out how to see this somehow or another. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about some of the story. If you didn't like it at all, that is perfectly fine, because at the end of the day, I'm going to go on and just watch another film and review that. So with that said, yeah. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.